Well, let's take a look at the stage. Our players are seated and ready. It's clear there you can see the players have addressed each other. Top 4 is about to begin. They're diving into team preview as we speak. David versus Guillermo. Who will advance into top 4? For Guillermo, there is the Incineroar and the Lunala out on the battlefield against the Grimmsnarl and Groudon of David.
Yeah, this is the Guillermo coming out with that Incineroar, always going to be useful, especially against one of these big physical attackers here. You've got the Groudon there, not going to appreciate that Intimidator drop. It's not going to be hitting as hard. So something that, David might consider early on. Let's try and get this off the field, reset that Intimidator drop and get something else a bit more effective on the field, like maybe a Charizard. It's always risky though in front of a Lunala, which you've already mentioned has access, potentially that Meteor Beam.
Well, it's just going to be going for a Protect as the Grimmsnarl sets up a light screen in the face of the special attacker Lunala there. So just playing a little defensively as Groudon goes for the Platypus Blades. Of course, it's not going to affect that Lunala and will activate early on in this game 1 the Sugar Berry on that opposing Incineroar, freeing up the Incineroar to be a little bit more vulnerable later on. You can really see the Berry paying off, reducing the attack, and it's able to then go for this passing shot as well. And, you've already thrown an Intimidate down against this opposing Groudon. Now you've lowered its attack by another stage. If you're David, you need to find a way to get this Groudon safely out and back in order to apply that pressure.
Yeah, and a nice play here from Guillermo, getting that parting shot off, allowing the Incineroar to stay in the back, and where he's got the option to bring it back in when he wants to be able to utilize that Intimidate even further and disrupt a little bit more with those fake outs and parting shots. The big thing here is, though, if you remember from David's earlier match, this Grimmsnarl actually has foul play, which is going to really threaten the Lunala on Guillermo's side of the field. So unless he is aware of it, he might not have seen the match playing himself at the time. It's something that he needs to be aware of and has to really take into consideration for the rest of this match, because Lunala 4 times weak to that dog type attack.
Well, maybe Lunala heard you there, Lee. It leaves the battlefield in replacement for that Incineroar that has come out here. It's going to be able to throw the Intimidate down again, and David's Groudon in a really precarious situation in terms of its offensive pressure, but it is going to hang around. Grimmsnarl's going to set up the Reflect, so David really playing this long game of getting defensive measures on the field as Groudon goes for another Precipice Blades. It will connect on both the opponents, but it is at -3 attack, so Incineroar doesn't even need its Sugar Berry at this point to be able to survive one. As Guillermo's Groudon goes, I see you have such a low attack and I'm going to boost mine just to rub a little salt in the wound.
Yeah, that sword stance there, boosting its attack by 2 stages and now becoming a real threat, because the one thing that Guillermo's been doing is managing the field, managing the Groudon, like you say, with the Intimidates, with the parting shot, putting it in a position where it's not really that effective, and the damage that it's doing is not great. And also the Precipice Blades missed that huge.
The Precipice Blades of Guillermo's Groudon is going to connect on both of David's Pokemon, but thanks to that Reflect, it's helping out against that Sword Stance boosted Groudon. But heartbreak for David, missing the Precipice Blades, and then the opposing Groudon gets the connect. I mean, this poor Groudon needs a break on David's side. Yeah,
it's unfortunate sometimes, and this is what can happen with these low accurate attacks. They can and do sometimes miss a crucial points. The thing is for David, I think we've already mentioned it, I think Groudon its attack is taking such a hit here. It needs to be taken out of play to come back in later, so to reset those drops essentially.
Well, Guillermo's going to be the one making a switch, and Lunala is going to rejoin the action here in replacement of that Incineroar. As the Grimmsnarl goes for Trick on David's side, it's going to shake things up a little bit and throw its item over to the opposing Groudon that now has a lagging tail. And the White Herb, interestingly enough, comes back to the Grimmsnarl, so it's going to hold on to that a little bit.
Yeah, and then we are going to see another Precipice Blade, but this time it does hit, unfortunately, because of those the reductions in attack, not really doing enough for David. And the Precipice Blades from Guillermo going to be able to pick up the knockout on the Grimmsnarl. I
mean, that was incredibly good information. Taking the White Herb away from Guillermo's Groudon means it's not going to be able to survive a potential Intimidate from an Incineroar in the back there. When I say survive, I mean it's not going to regain its stats. It's going to have to suffer that -1 attack drop. Of course, the Precipice Blades from Groudon on David's side is not dealing a lot of damage, but critically has broken that Shadow Shield on the Lunala. So it's going to be a little bit more vulnerable going forward. I mean, the Grimmsnarl has been KO'd at this point. You don't have to worry about foul play, but Lunala still doesn't want to take some big damage from something like this Charizard, considering both players still have access to their Dynamax.
Yeah, and that's the big thing here. There is always a possibility that Lunala could be a Dynamax option here. It can go for that Max Rockfall if it's got access to that Meteor Beam. So that's something that Charizard may need to be a little bit wary of. But again, David in a great position here to go for that Gigantamax with the Charizard. It's got the Sun on the field. It's going to be able to put down some huge damage onto either the Groudon or that Lunala that has had its Shadow Shield broke.
Well, the Charizard going to capitalize on the fact that the sun is in the sky thanks to the drought ability of Groudon, and is in a prime position to go for something like a G-Max Wildfire and start setting the residual damage out on Guillermo's side of the battlefield. But Guillermo's also going to go for a Dynamax here.
And it'll be interesting to see which Pokemon this will be, because it could be that Groudon. It has got the Sword Stance boost already, so it will be hitting extremely hard, and that is what the Pokemon Guillermo's decided to go with.
I mean, we've seen Guillermo's Groudon already moving slower than Davide's one. It has got that lagging tail now as well, so it would be moving last in its priority bracket anyway. But that does indicate it might have that little bit of extra bulk. There is the Meteor Beam coming out, though, from this Lunala, and this is something that Charizard does not want to face, but it does run the risk of not being the most accurate of moves. It gets the special attack boost, and then thanks to its Power Herb, will be able to charge, and you can see it is going to connect here and find its mark down. I believe on this opposing Charizard, this is going to hurt Lee, but actually it's the Groudon, and just, doesn't even pick up the KO.
Just misses the knockout.
Oh, and Charizard can go for the G-Max Wildfire, breathing a sigh of relief that it was not the target of that Rock-type move, and it will not be able to get the KO on Groudon, but I think critically will start that residual damage on the field. That was not how I expected this turn to go. In fact, even more surprises, Shadow Claw comes out and gets the KO on the Lunala.
Critical hit. Huge critical hit. Taking down the Lunala, taking it out of play. It's just got that Meteor Beam boost to its special attack, so it was in a great position. Missed the knockout on the Groudon by 4 HP, and now it has unfortunately fallen to that Shadow Claw.
And the Charizard fall to the max Rockfall. I mean, that was certainly not how I expected it to play out. In fact, it was the Groudon able to get the KO on that opposing Lunala, and then the Groudon on Guillermo's side getting the KO on the Charizard. I was sure that Meteor Beam was going to go into the Charizard instead of the Groudon, and you can see what Guillermo was trying to do. I believe that Groudon, yes, it's only on 4 HP remaining. It could very easily have been KO'd at that point, and then Groudon wouldn't have been able to KO Lunala in return. I mean, fantastic play by Guillermo and a clutch survival on that Groudon for Davide.
Yeah, big trades that turn, and, you know, this is going to impact how this game plays out now. You know, the residual damage is huge for Davide. It's going to start chipping away at the Groudon in particular. Maybe not so much that Incineroar that's just hit the field because of its fire typing, but then you look to Davide's side of the field and he has got that Zacian that's just hit the field. It is going to be threatened by the Groudon, but, you know, the Groudon's so low health now, it does have to consider the fake out from the Incineroar this turn, but this can be something where you can just protect this turn, and then you can knock it out the next turn and maybe allow your own Groudon to go down and hope that you were able to close it up with Zacian. But, you know, it's looking more likely that it's in Guillermo's favor at the moment.
Well, the Groudon looks to be a little bit stuck, and it is going to be KO'd by that fake out. I mean, we saw earlier that Davide is running that Assault Vest variant, so it doesn't have the utility to be able to protect. Zacian, however, being nice and fast on this field, is able to go for the Behemoth Blade, and finding its mark down onto the opposing Groudon. With the limited HP remaining of Groudon, it's going to be able to get the KO here. The issue is, at this stage now, what Pokemon is going to be coming in the back for Guillermo?
Yeah, and the options that he got, obviously, are the Regieleki could be an option to come in. The Charizard could be an option. You've got to hope that it's probably not the Grimmsnarl, because that's not going to be super really that effective, but it is the Charizard, of course. You have brought your Groudon to this match, so this is a perfect position for Guillermo. Managed the field very well. Bit unfortunate that he just missed the knockout on that Groudon, because I think it would have been a bit more streamlined for him to probably close this first matchup for him. But that's how things go sometimes. Weren't able to pick up the knockout onto the Groudon there, and it was able to capitalize on that opportunity with the Shadow Claw and pick up the knockout. Yeah,
well, Zacian going to give it its best effort here, going for the Sacred Sword to KO the Incineroar, so now it just has to find a way through the Charizard that connects the Blast Burn. There is no sun in the sky, so it's not able to pick up the KO. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Charizard's not going to be affected by the G-Max Wildfire, but it will take chip from the sand damage here. Zacian's in the position where Charizard has to take a turn of recharge, but it's at such a high HP, I wonder if the 2 Behemoth Blades is going to be enough here.
You've got to wonder, because Behemoth Blade hits very hard, and it's all about how much damage this does, and it doesn't quite look like it's going to be enough. But you've got that residual damage from the Sandstorm here. Is that going to put it in range now of that next Behemoth Blade to be able to take it down? That recharge turn, the missing the knockout there onto the Zacian there, because the sun's not up.
Yes.
Really means the Zacian's in a point where it potentially could close this one out.
And even if the Charizard survives, then it could go for something like the Blast Burn or the Hurricane that could, you know, miss potentially. But I like this play by Davide, just going for the Protect, giving that Charizard one more chip. Oh, no, it doesn't. The Sandstorm disappears. Now things get really interesting.
Yeah, and, you know, this is the one time where you're thinking, I need this to just be one more turn of Sandstorm. It all comes down to whether or not this hits and is enough.
The Behemoth Blade connects on the Charizard, but it is not enough to pick up the KO against it. 30 hit points remaining, and Charizard goes for Blast Burn and does manage to catch. So Guillermo Castilla will take game 1 in this top 8 set. I mean, what fantastic positioning by Guillermo in this one.
That was so close between two players right until the end there. That was incredible from both players. It really could have gone either way, you know. I think if the Sandstorm had stayed up, maybe that one extra turn, it might have been enough. But you were kind of thinking, when the Charizard was sitting at full health, you think, this is over now. The Zacian doesn't really have a chance, but you can see how well Davide's trained his Zacian to be able to take that Blast Burn. A big, powerful attack from Charizard. I know it wasn't Dynamax, I know it wasn't in the sun, Gigantamax, I should say, but it's still a very strong attack. It's one of the strongest fire-type attacks that Charizard has access to.
Well, Davide's leading out with the Grimmsnarl and Groudon once again, and Guillermo's got the Incineroar and the Lunala. Now, like you just mentioned, Lee, one of Guillermo's key strategies in Game 1 was to really neutralize the pressure that Groudon could have, and I wonder if Davide's going to allow that to happen for a second time.
Yeah, I think, you know, that might be the big question here. Do you try and, if you have brought the Charizard, if you are Davide, do you try and get it in a bit sooner? It's a little bit tricky, though, in front of the Lunala, I think, because the big thing about the Lunala is that it has got access to that Meteor Beam, and, of course, huge reveal. The Hypnosis coming out onto that Grimmsnarl and putting it to sleep.
I mean, absolutely not a surprise here. A blind Hypnosis connecting, and the Precipice Blades from the Groudon on Davide's side going to be able to find its mark with both targets. Precipice Blades going into Lunala, breaking that Shadow Shield and activating the Sugar Berry on the Incineroar. So it's not going to be able to have that going forward. However, Groudon is going to have to take another one of these parting shots. So Guillermo really playing through similar motions to Game 1, trying to stop this Groudon from having any pressure or authority on the field at all. And I love the adjustment of putting that Grimmsnarl to sleep. I believe the Lunala protected in the first game, and this is a really nice adjustment, not having to worry about foul play when Grimmsnarl is too sleepy to even use it.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, Grimmsnarl's not going to be effective at all now, and it's not going to threaten anymore, at least for this next turn, with that foul play, because the foul play is the one thing that Lunala really does worry about. Got to worry about the Shadow Claw as well in the Groudon, but as long as the Grimmsnarl's out of action, you don't have to worry about the support options that it's got, and it makes the matchup a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a risky switch in bringing your Zacian while facing down against a Groudon. And Lunala's going to go for the Meteor Beam here. So going to be absorbing, again, the Cosmic Energy, getting a +1 special attack boost. But I wonder who the target's going to be here, Lee.
Yeah, more likely to be that Grimmsnarl, I think, because of how kind of impactful it can be in this match. You want to remove it as quickly as possible from the field. Doubling up into it this turn is quite safe, so you go for that Meteor Beam here and hopefully catch it with a Precipice Blades potentially from the Groudon. But we're not seeing that. We are seeing another Sword Stance. That Groudon not happy with the neutral attack, wanting to boost it and get even more damage off the following turn.
I mean, this Groudon's in an absolute state of grace right now. It can't do anything wrong, can it? It's just playing so perfectly for Guillermo. And I think the interesting thing is you switch the Zacian in thinking, hey, I think Guillermo's just going to click that Sword Stance button again. You don't want to switch it in and have to take a Precipice Blades. You can see as well Grimmsnarl's light screen that was able to get up before it fell asleep, paying off a little bit. The Meteor Beam didn't do as much damage, but I think the critical thing here is that Lunala has now got that +1 special attack boost, and Zacian's in a really difficult situation. If Lunala wants to protect, Groudon can try and deal with that Zacian before it can use its speed advantage to deal with the Lunala.
Yeah, and you've also got the option here at any point for this Groudon, if Guillermo decides to go for that Dynamax. But I think he's going to be probably a little bit more patient here, as we do see a Behemoth Blade from the Zacian into that Groudon.
That does so much damage into the Groudon. Lunala going to be moving first out of the restricted duo on Guillermo's side, and this Moongeist Beam is going to be finding its mark down on the opposing Zacian, just doing about 1/3 of damage as Groudon follows that with the Precipice Blades, but it will avoid the Grimmsnarl. I think the key Pokemon, however, was to connect on that Zacian and just remove it from the field.
Yeah, but I think, you know, they've always got to worry if this Grimmsnarl does wake up.
No!
There is always the risk of that foul play, and with the Shadow Shield broken now on that Lunala, it is susceptible to being knocked out. So a little bit risky, not ideal, missing the Precipice Blades there. But, like you say, taking down that Zacian is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle to getting through this final one.
Well, Groudon's going to join the field on Davide's side. You know, I really like the play he did earlier by switching it out earlier than he did in that Game 1. So he's been able to come in without all of those intimidates and passing shots. Of course, Guillermo does have the utility to maybe switch out that Lunala and bring the Incineroar in. Not only can it throw an Intimidate down, but if Grimmsnarl wakes up from the foul play, your Lunala's not going to get KO'd. And I think Incineroar doesn't mind taking one of those.
No, it definitely won't. And I think that's a nice option there. But you could also just go for the protect here, like you say. I think one of the things that you want to have to worry about is when that Grimmsnarl is going to wake up. It looks like it's going to take another turn of sleep here.
Yeah, and the Shadow Claw going into the protect, so wise from Guillermo to play defensively there, but switch into the offense with Groudon once again. Precipice Blades will connect, it will get the KO on Grimmsnarl, and do you see how much damage it does to the Groudon? David's Grimmsnarl wasn't able to set up a Reflect this time, so it was getting the full brunt force of that Precipice Blades.
Yeah, now just the Charizard left to come in for David, and the problem is, I think here, if we saw from that game 1, the Lunala outsped the Charizard. And now it's already used its Meteor Beam, so it can't really use it again in this position. But it can Dynamax, and it can go Max Rockfall, and it is +1 special attack, so it will hit extremely hard into that Charizard. Got to be very careful, though, around the Groudon on David's side, because it has got that Shadow Claw, and it will do a lot of damage. And we saw what it did in game 1, so you don't want to repeat the situation. But maybe if you go into your Dynamax with Lunala as an option to just try and get rid of the Charizard before it can be impactful for David, then it may be worth it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and this is where things start to get really intense here in top 8. Guillermo's that one game away. He needs to make sure he's not making any crucial mistakes to allow Davide the advantage. I think switching the Groudon out here is risky. I mean, you know, it's got the boost from that Swords Dance, but the key thing, I think, is to preserve it for later on. Bringing that Incineroar on is going to be able to throw the Intimidate down, and then you have that Fake Out pressure to utilize going into this next turn, particularly if David, you know, has that Groudon on the field. But I love your reaction here, Lee. You're very happy with calling this.
Well, I just think it's the Charizard doesn't really stand much chance, I don't think, against a Max Rockfall here. I think it's like the one option where you've got here, potentially, as long as it doesn't protect, to remove it from the field right now and not even have to worry about it, because we all know, we've seen throughout this whole weekend how powerful Charizard is. Gigantamax Charizard, it's seriously strong. It's something that you don't really want to deal with. If you've got the ability to just take it out of the equation, then just clinch that chance while you've got the opportunity to. Turn hasn't started yet. We could see Max Guard, but the Charizard has went for that Gigantamax.
Well, let's have a look. It's actually the Max Guard on the Lunala's side of things. So Guillermo going for that as Charizard goes for the Max Airstream. So not allowing the speed boost on that side. Followed up by the Groudon Shadow Claw. So a great move there from the Lunala. I mean, interesting change of events, and I think it's nice to kind of burn through that one turn on David's side and stall out that light screen. That's the critical thing. That's
a huge play here, and not only that, it gives you a bit more consistency where you can get your Incineroar onto the field now pretty safely, and you can use that Fake Out to stop the Shadow Claw being an option onto the Lunala. So then the Lunala's way more free to think, right, I've got this free turn now. Problem is, the Charizard can take this opportunity to go for the Max Guard, so we could be playing a little bit of hit or miss here, cat or mouse, if Davide decides to protect this turn.
And this is the beautiful thing. Incineroar can go for the Fake Out into the Groudon with Assault Vest. It couldn't protect, so Lunala can now do what it wants to do and go for that powerful Max Rockfall. Without any light screen, Charizard goes down in one hit. And now you've just got Groudon against all 4 remaining Pokemon on Guillermo's side.
Yeah, and the Lunala here in particular. I think Guillermo's play with the Groudon, getting it in, getting that Sword Stance, you're putting a lot of attention on that side of the field and kind of taking a little bit away from the Lunala. But if you forget about Lunala for 1 second, it can just pick up knockout after knockout after knockout, and we saw how effective it was with that surprise hypnosis, that first turn.
I love that opening.
And they took the Grimmsnarl completely out of the game, and I think from that point it was very difficult for David to be able to get any sort of momentum. And we do see Guillermo here celebrating.
Oh, look at him with all the Spanish friends that he's got supporting and cheering him on. I mean, fantastic, and, you know, commiserations to David, but this is what it's all about. This means so much to our players, and for Guillermo Castilla to be able to get into the top 4 is a great representation for him. I mean, huge congratulations. You can see the joy and passion in this venue.